Destination Medicine is a joint project of the regional training hubs. This podcast series brings you medical students' accounts of their experience in applying to study medicine. Welcome to Destination Medicine. I'm Peter Letts. Shray Sinha's enthusiasm for rural medicine is infectious. He says it's a huge blessing to be able to study in Dubbo, principally because of his very close and ongoing contacts with his teachers and mentors. And he's also helping others by undertaking a study into the inclusiveness of this very podcast. But first, Shray Sinha describes to Nicole Goodman what it's like studying only metres from where he was born.
Dubbo's actually home for me. I was born and bred there. And one interesting thing I like to always bring up is the university is right behind the hospital. And I was born about 50 metres that way. So I was finishing up with engineering and it felt like I was in my last year of engineering when this program opened up, and I thought, definitely got to apply.
Yeah, wow. If distance is a factor, it was meant to be.
Exactly.
Shray, was there any time you thought, I was born in Dubbo, I've lived a rural lifestyle, yes, the medical school's just around the corner, but I do want to train and get that metro feel and work in the city. Was that ever a consideration for you, or it was always rural?
I think there is definitely an interest to see and compare what metropolitan life is like working in medicine, but ultimately quality of life, and I think definitely the lifestyle is one thing outside of medicine. Lifestyle makes it a lot more appealing. I'm sure this has come up a lot of times.
Oh, yeah.
Being able to get places within the hour helps. But one of the biggest advantages I've found is we actually get a lot of time, even one-on-one time with senior clinicians, demonstrators, all the staff at the hospital. They're more than happy to walk things through. Like, they're really happy to share their knowledge, which is a really big privilege, actually. And I think our metropolitan counterparts really miss out on that.
When you decided to apply for medicine, what were your first steps? Did you have a particular plan? Did you map anything out?
I don't think I had to map too many things out. At the time, though, I had to really make a decision. Do I want to stay in engineering or do I want to do medicine? And I think a lot of decision making and probably a lot of annoying my friends and family at the time, asking the same questions over and over again, happened. But in the end, I did think that while you can really make a difference in people's lives across both professions, I think engineering, there's a bit of isolation involved. You're by yourself or in front of a computer a lot of the days, whereas in medicine, you've got that face-to-face interaction with your patients, with other staff, everyone, and medicine really won the battle in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Applying for medicine is a huge undertaking. How was that experience for you? And do you have any advice for people that want to study medicine?
It is definitely a big process applying for medicine, especially contrasted to undergrad, which was a lot more straightforward.
Yeah.
But the most important thing I have is if you want to do medicine and if you've got the interest initially, you'll definitely be able to apply. You'll be able to make it through, I think. I think once you're in medicine, though, the big thing to watch out for is to be prepared for making a few sacrifices along the way, particularly friends, family, commitments, things like that. There will be times where you won't have as much time to spend with them, but that's not always the case. That's only during exams and stuff. And I think also if you're feeling tired or burnt out, just remind yourself why you applied in the first place. Usually you'll be fine from there.
When you got accepted into medicine, was there anyone in particular who's helped guide you along the journey, a mentor perhaps?
Yeah, absolutely. My whole family, big credit to them. They were definitely an ongoing source of inspiration. So yeah, my dad's actually a doctor as well in the community and got a lot of family friends growing up who were in health, and both learning from them, being around them and seeing how even others spoke about them in the community was always really good and really inspiring, actually. Since getting into medicine, I've found a lot of people really, especially a lot of the rural doctors here in Dubbo, they're so passionate and they really share that. And you can't help, it's contagious, you can't help but develop the same passion for rural health as them. So that's been really fun.
Is there a piece of advice that you wish you were given before getting into medicine?
Yeah, definitely. And this is something I'm still working on, I'll admit, and I'll probably still be working on, even if you came and asked me in 5 years. But that's basically that you've got to find a good balance between your own life and medicine, studying medicine. Both will go on. And also, I think there's time to work on both. And I've definitely been guilty of this at times. I will almost put one aside completely and focus on the other. And that's probably not the best balance. I think it's important to have good balance in life, especially when you're doing something as long and difficult as medicine.
Yeah, we hear that a lot about prioritizing time to try and not all be study and work, but a bit of rest and relaxation too. Very common. Is there a particular clinical specialty that you've developed or that you have an eye on so far?
Yeah, so I've not ruled anything out yet. And I think that's kind of the way to go is as I get more and more exposure, just look at what excites me. And definitely so far, the fields of GP, psychiatry, and cardiology, I've definitely found them the most interesting so far. Just personal interest, I guess. And I think also the lifestyle of all those three would probably suit me a bit more than something like surgery.
Now, what's also particularly interesting is that you've decided to do your third year research project focusing on this podcast, Destination Medicine. Tell us a little bit about the project and what you found and how it can be improved.
Of course, of course. Happy to do so. So I will admit, for starters, I have not done research before. And so it was a good challenge at the start, but I've had a fantastic supervisor, Dr. Pip Southwell, and she's really helped guide me and look after me during it. So, yeah, as you said, I am looking at the Destination Medicine podcast. And what I'm focused on is looking at gaps in representation of the rural pipeline. So now just quickly, the rural pipeline, it's a term to describe anyone interested in joining the rural medical workforce. This includes anyone from prospective medical students all the way to consultants who've finished all their medical training. It's a really diverse group of people, just from research demographically as well as their priorities. So you've got people that are First Nations, for example. You've got rural origin students. You've got gender diverse, first and family. On top of that, the priorities are things like, are there enough opportunities for training to be done rurally? Are there opportunities for my family's career or education? These are all the big important priorities that people have. So what I've tried to do is I've explored, are there any gaps in any of these spaces? So let me start off by saying the areas with no gaps. So Destination Medicine's done a really, really great job of focusing on people who are maybe rural origin or people who have rural immersion. So maybe they did a placement rurally or they've joined an end-to-end rural program. And also people who have found community engagement and mentorship in rural environments. You guys have encapsulated that perfectly. The Destination Medicine sought out to really focus on these groups when it started. And so naturally, you've had great discussions, lots of meaningful insights from the guests, really passionate responses as well. So that's been really good to hear. I've actually had the privilege of hearing pretty much all the episodes from doctors and mainstream doctors. So that's been good fun. The first big gap, if we look at international medical graduates, for example, it really stands out. And same with, culturally and linguistically diverse people, is numeric representation. So in the rural medical workforce, international medical graduates actually comprise 30% of that group. That's a huge, huge section. But in Destination Medicine, it was significantly lower than this, under 10% actually. And so my first big suggestion is we need more episodes of these kind of groups. So more episodes with international medical graduates, for example, would be really useful, really beneficial. There were a few other groups in there. First and Family, for example, needed more episodes. First Nations, the guests who were First Nations gave fantastic responses to what it's like in their journey being First Nations. They gave really unique perspectives, and it will always be beneficial if you have more episodes. So that's one area of just increasing more guests. But there was another really interesting perspective that came out, which was, for example, with female guests. it was really good. There were 26 out of 56 guests that were female. That's nearly 50%. That's a really solid number of female guests. In fact, that ratio is actually better than what the ratio of female consultants is in the medical workforce. So that's a big achievement.
Tick.
Yeah, exactly. But unfortunately, the issue is numeric representation. It's not the whole picture of representation. There's more to representation than just numeric side of it. Out of the 26, actually, only 3 of them really went into depth about what it's like being a female in the medical workforce. And, they talked about unique challenges or insights about their time applying to colleges, for example, or is the face of medicine changing to include more female representation? So there was a lot of useful discussion there. There's definitely a lot more room to talk about things like female representation. There was a really useful framework to talk about this. It talks about representation in terms of diversity and inclusion both. And so often a lot of people tend to use the two words interchangeably, diversity and inclusion. But one of the most brilliant descriptions I've seen was diversity is like jigsaw puzzle pieces, and inclusion is all the pieces together to form the whole puzzle. And every piece feels like it fits in and works well into something of a bigger picture. So using that analogy, I think Destination Medicine has done a pretty fantastic job of looking at diversity, and it's definitely got numeric representation. But what it needs moving forward is to take an inclusion standpoint as well. And the way to do that is more focused questions and really asking people what it means to be female or first in family or First Nations. As I mentioned earlier, what are the opportunities for my family, their career and education, kind of new priorities, and they're part of logistics, I call them. They're all things that are really important for almost anyone in the rural pipeline to know. I think that'll be really beneficial moving forward.
Yeah, you make some interesting points. I think looking at a more fulsome representation of the people that we talk to and digging a bit deeper into diversity and inclusion, and also how their family members and people around them are impacted and how it's beneficial for them too, is certainly something that we can look at as well. And I thank you for that. And I think the work that you're doing on this is really important. And I think it's exciting that you're doing it for your research project. That's really good. Thank you so much, Shray, for taking the time. It's been great chatting to you.
Thank you. Absolute pleasure.
Shray Sinha, a third-year medical student at the Sydney University Medical Program School of Rural Health in Dubbo. This is Destination Medicine. Thanks for listening. Regional training hubs are supported by funding from the Australian Government under the Rural Health Multidisciplinary Training Program.